Now I'm going to show you where to find function information and syntax in the manuals, which I have showed you briefly already, but not in detail. So, and this is my bullet list that I'm going to follow. So I go to the master book list. I'm going to look for the SQL language reference. If it could speed up a little, and I'm going to click there. And I think, but I'm not sure, that it might be chapter 5. There you go, chapter 5. So, chapter 5 tells you all about all the functions. And as you can see, you have aggregate functions, analytic functions, single row functions, all these different types. In the manual, it basically lists out all the startup information, all the divisions, how they classify them. And then it goes further down and it basically lists every single function in alphabetical order. So if I was to go into count, it will give me a syntax diagram for count, which says count asterisk or count all as the default or count distinct. What else do we have? I can see what I've showed you before because I've actually gone into it and it's still highlighted. Init cap. Init cap char returns just a value. I think we've used things like substring. Let's find substring. Substring says substring character position substring length, which means put in a string, go from position whatever it is for a length, and give me the substring of a string. So finding the syntax for a function, and obviously things like examples, is very simple. Let's click on the sum function. And you should find examples in here as well in the manual. You find the syntax diagram. You should understand these by now. As it says there, this is an expression which can be anything from a single simple value all the way up to a query. Single row functions get applied to each row as the row is processed, and here you can see it's all divided up by numeric functions. Absolute value, arc, cosine, sine, arctan, arctan2, bit, and seeding, so on and so forth. You see these are all number functions. If you've done any kind of mathematics in the past, you should recognize what most of these things are. And here, these are specific to computer programming. String functions. If you've never done computer programming, then some of these might be unfamiliar. Left trim, trim from the left. Left pad, pad from the left. In other words, put space characters in. CHR converts between ASCII values and char. The ASCII value is the number that the computer produces when you hit the keyboard. The number goes through the computer gets the keyboard, reinterprets it as a character. So you can interpret between character and number, or ASCII code value. Concat, concatenate strings, take one string and add it to another. Lowercase. These N values are actually all for national language character sets, for a much larger character set than ASCII, a Unicode character set. For languages such as Chinese, which have 4,000 characters, we only have 26 letters and 10 digits and then a bunch of punctuations, not nearly as much as 4,000. Regular expressions, which we will look at in the next course. Replace replaces values in a string. In other words, take an A and replace it with an X, and so on and so forth. Right pad, same as left pad, add spaces to the end. Right trim, trim a string from the end, trim off the spaces and white space. SoundX, that's something sound-like function. I've never used it. Translate, translates values. We'll look at it later on. Treat trim, trim is the same as left and right trim except from both sides. Character functions returning number values, obviously. And ASCII, as I was talking about earlier. Character conversion takes a character, returns a number. In string returns the position in a string of a string, a substring. Length of a string. And here we have lots of date functions that do all sorts of weird and wonderful things. Add months, current date, timestamp, time zone, extract from times last day. Look, they're all basically, these names are all intuitive. So just by reading the name you can really tell what it does. Apart from something like toChar, which converts a character to a string, and then things like sysdate and systimestamp, they produce the date and all the timestamp from the Oracle database that's stored internally. There's a few other things. Truncation of dates, in other words, for example, give me the date truncated to a month, So you just get the month and the year, or a day, or minute, seconds, etc. And then we have some odd ones, such as general comparisons, find me the greatest or least in a set of values. Conversion functions, lots of these to convert between different types of data types. Null related functions, we've seen some of these. Particularly we use NVL. NVL2 is if you like, a spread out version of NVL. Let's go and look at NVL to start with. Two expressions. In other words, if this expression is null, produce that. What does NVL2 do? Well, if this expression is null, produce that, otherwise produce that. Lets you determine the value returned by a query based on whether a specified expression is null or is not null. Expression 1 is not null, then NVL returns expression 2. Expression 1 is null, and so in other words, we get this the right way around. NVL returns if expression 1 is not null. It's kind of counterintuitive. If this is not null, it returns expression 2. If it is null, it returns expression 3. This is where all the single row functions are in the manuals. Not complicated, just a lot of them.